Initially, during the research and planning section of our media text, we began looking at the various genres in which we could have explored further. It became quickly obvious to us that the sci-fi genre was the most appealing, yet we still enjoyed certain elements of the thriller and horror genre. In a certain sense, we wanted to create a hybrid genre of both sci-fi horror and sci-fi thriller. We wished to carry forth most of the codes and conventions of the sci-fi genre, yet retain some in the thriller and horror sections. We began looking at the various movies of these genres, ranging from Limitless and Matrix to The Fountain and A Scanner Darkly. We looked at how these movies both correlated with and challenged the typical view of the codes and conventions of the sci-fi genre. Certain movies, such as Sleepy Hollow, at the same time as being a sci-fi movie, had certain horror and thriller elements. At the same time, it adhered to both genres' typical codes and conventions. We wished to attain this with our movie. The majority of elements that composed our movie were all in some shape or form influenced by the movies we studied during the research stage. In the beginning, we began developing our own individual plotline, and towards the end it began to merge, and we decided on a final plot. As we had decided in the sci-fi genre, this was our basis. During the development, we began to take heavy influence from the certain movies we studied in great detail, such as A Scanner Darkly and Limitless, as their plots contain hallucinogenic drugs, and we wish to base this here around the foundation for the beginning of our movie. These drugs are similar to the ones in our plot, evidently, and by this stage we had decided on creating an alternate world similar to that in The Matrix and Limitless as well. When the drug in question is consumed in both these, they get transported to this here alternate world, and that's what we are trying to create with our movie, especially in the opening moments. Both these adhere to the codes and conventions of the typical sci-fi genre movie. Finally, when we decided on the plot, we began working on the monologue, which we wanted to convey some sense of isolation, similar to the one in the opening of Donnie Darko. After drafts and redrafts, we were happy with the product, which seemed to be sci-fi stylized. We had decided on the drug name Elysium, and at this stage this has influence from Greek mythology, the Fields of Elysium, as does The Matrix with references to Alice in Wonderland respectively. And also, we decided on the name of the movie, which would be called Limbo. This was to be reflective of the good limbo, which at that stage we had called light limbo, and the more manifested nightmares, reincarnation similar to that in Silent Hill. This was dark limbo respectively. Both names again appear to come and develop from the codes and conventions of the sci-fi genre. After this, we began working on our storyboards. Certain scenes, such as the first person scene looking up the canopy, took influence from The Walking Dead. This was later an influence for future point of view shots towards the end of our movie. We also wanted to begin our movie similar to that of A Scanner Darkly, as this shows the effects of the drug almost instantaneously after the beginning of the movie. Also, the use of both the colour schemes of light and dark limbo are influenced from both Alien and Donnie Darko, as during more peaceful scenes the colour design appears more bright and warm, while during more frantic scenes it appears cold, dark and eerie. Also, Dark Limbo especially was inspired by the set design of Sleepy Hollow, as it has the creepy, isolated atmosphere surrounding it. One of the most notable scenes we took heavy influence from was the mirror scene that was heavily inspired by Donnie Darko. In this scene, this is where Frank manifests in front of Donnie Darko. We wanted to reiterate this here in our movie, but instead of it being the manifestation of Frank, it was the effects of the drug, and in this case, the bleeding eye. During this scene, when the protagonist begins to bleed from his eye, we took influence from this particular aspect of the scene from another media text, another sci-fi media text in particular, a game called Heavy Rain. In this particular media text, once the protagonist is exposed to a certain virtual world for a lengthy period of time, he also begins to bleed from his eyes. Both the use of a virtual world and drug use is heavily influenced towards the sci-fi codes and conventions. Many scenes and cuts were also reminiscent of the codes and conventions of the sci-fi genre in which we intended to develop from. One scene in particular was when leaves were intended to descend from the canopy. On each leaf was a particular piece of text relating to the credits. This was supposed to be reminiscent of the scene in Matrix, with computer code descending. We decided that this wasn't really working for our movie and it was fairly derived, and so we took it out and focused elsewhere. The stumbling throughout the middle of the movie is reminiscent of A Scanner Darkly, as it exposes the effect of being an addict and withdrawal from the drug, again adhering to the use of drugs in the sci-fi film. Finally, the end scene before the credits was also inspired by a similar piece in Donnie Darko, as the scene focuses on the protagonist and then shortly after exposes the scene's movie title. As we began to develop from and began finishing our research stage, we began to notice what would or would not be visually appealing. All the while we attempted to have our movie correlate with the codes and conventions of the typical sci-fi genre. Outside of particular shots, our movie develops from the sci-fi genre. Aside from particular shots and cuts, our movie develops from the sci-fi codes and conventions continuously throughout. These include the use of 2 alternate virtual worlds, a unique colour scheme for the 3 sections, light limbo, reality and dark limbo, as well as the Sin City effect towards the end. The use of hallucinogens, the manner in which the monologue is delivered, the progression of the effects of the world and the drug on the protagonist, the setting as well as set in a near future dystopia similar to that of A Scanner Darkly. The classical musical piece Moonlight Sonata, both piano and guitar, again is influenced by Scanner Darkly and Donnie Darko. The manner in which the drug user is able to teleport his consciousness to a virtual world is similar to that of Matrix and Limitless. The use of complexity in the plot similar to that of Inception, and an enigma is created at the very start in which it's not intended to develop or communicate more than would be desired to the audience. Likewise, the use of a single male protagonist is reminiscent of many sci-fi genre films such as Riddick and Pitch Black. The movie focuses on teens especially and the effects that drugs entail. In our movie, the drug is fictional. We created it and its effects, but the repercussions and consequences of drug use are highly visible in reality. The main protagonist is a male teenager, as is the primary audience of the sci-fi genre, and so it may possibly have a personal effect on the viewer. The plot and use of various effects throughout may also be visually appealing for the target audience. Another taboo theme our movie addresses, besides for narcotics, is the manifestation of mental psychology, primarily hallucinations and behavioural change. This again is representative of the target audience of teens who are directly exposed to this on a daily basis. The use of dark colours is also representative of many teens who have a darker mindset or gothic influences. We wish to capture this and visually represent this, and this idea of isolation, which also may be representative of many. The audience for our media text would be primarily male teenagers 15 plus. As such, our movie would receive probably a similar age rating due to the heavy use of drugs and the dark themes entailed. We kept this in mind throughout the planning and production to those who enjoy various elements of the sci-fi genre, which includes fictional worlds, fantasy plots, manifestation of social conventions and futuristic dystopias. We address the audience by in turn directly addressing many deemed taboo social conventions. These include drug use and mental psychotic manifestations. These relate to real life and in turn interact with the audience on a personal level. Also, during planning we created 3 promotional advertisements for the movie and the drug Elysium, similar to those created by Resident Evil in promotional advertisements. Both a classical piece of music and a guitar cover, as well as a visually appealing yet influenced title, also attracts an audience, as so does the dramatic increase in volume when the guitar cover of Moonlight Sonata comes on straight after the effects of the drug Elysium are shown in the mirror scene where the blood descends down the protagonist's thighs. Our texts, fonts and titles are also used in addressing and attracting the target audience. The font style is inspired by the blocky style of Alien, but we felt a stronger, bolder alteration was more effective, similar to that of The Matrix. The appearance of the text throughout in a blurry-out fashion is also reminiscent of various sci-fi-esque films, and yet is still very aesthetically pleasing, as our colour scheme of text was contrast foreground colour, similar to that of the white text against a black background in Alien. We attempted to replicate this with our fade into black scene and the appearance of our movie title at the very end. The timing of this is influenced by the Donnie Darko scene as well. These are all very interactable elements. They grab the audience's attention and draw them near, as does the colour scheme, the mise-en-scène, especially the costume design and props. The costume design, which is very mundane, almost everyday, stereotypical teen in fashion, which is just a scarf, baseball shirt, jeans and Converse, as well as the prop, which was the orange pill bottle. Institution was the main element we concerned ourselves with throughout development. Similarly to the audience, which in this turn was teens, representation of various social conventions and forms as well as technology. There are many issues surrounding these elements, such as people's taste in movies changing, the evolution to keep up to date with these trends, as well as the convergence of technology in turn to keep up with these various trends. We decided that the likes of Warner Brothers Pictures was an appropriate institution that might distribute our movie. We looked through various other institutions throughout development and research. We felt that they are a well-known and renowned company who distribute a vast selection of media, from movies to books to DVDs to games, in conjunction with a film release. They also focus heavily on the sci-fi genre of movies. This is opposed to smaller independent companies who mightn't have as big of a reach to get to a larger target audience as big companies such as Warner Brothers Pictures. We also included our own alteration of the Warner Brothers logo at the start of our film. We changed the colour scheme and design of this. We used layers of crosshatch and contrast and colour alterations. This was inspired by The Matrix, which in a similar manner the logo and introduction was altered to fit the movie. This again, with the convergence of technology, would reach out to a larger target audience. We have learned a lot about technology throughout this process, especially in relation to the convergence of various technologies. We developed proficiencies in various applications throughout editing, ranging from Final Cut Pro X, Photo Booth, iPhoto, Photoshop, Motion and Text Edit. We learned about the various elements contained within each of these applications and used them the best we could. Namely, on one occasion, we layered various effects in Motion and in Text Edit onto the title. We altered speeds, timings, presentation and overall aesthetic and colours. We used layered text animation in Photoshop as well for one of our promotional advertisements at the start. We used various applications and effects in our movie as well, ranging from crosshatches, blurs, radial blurs, Garçon blurs, simple blurs, directional blurs, fades, crossfades, flashes, cross-cutting, merging and dispatching of audio files, and the best integration that we could throughout. What we learned is that it's not enough to be only proficient in one element of this industry, especially in relation to technology. You have to be adept to multiple, ranging from filming to planning to editing to audio to music. We used a Sony HD camera, tripod and MacBook Pro throughout. On the MacBook we were able to upload, distribute, edit and form our film together. This is highly representative of the convergence of technology throughout the years. We made many choices throughout, from our initial plot and monologue, and made alterations where we felt necessary. We developed and ended up with an outcome we are all proud of. Many scenes were cut or changed. This is evident by our initial storyboards, which contained such cut scenes such as the leaf falling scene from the canopy and the flickering of lights and scene change towards the conversion between light limbo and reality. We felt the choices we made were necessary and for the best for the movie. Finally, we progressed a lot from our preliminary. At the start we felt it was very rushed and very unplanned. We made sure this would not happen to us whenever we were doing a proper movie this time. We discovered how important attention to detail and continuity was throughout, so we made sure to have superb continuity throughout our movie. We made sure to go back and film any scenes which were out of place or contained continuity errors, and we felt this here was the best action to do. We also wanted to contain a few hidden Easter eggs as such throughout the planning. It's worth noting that during the credits and cast, during the set design and written by section, both the characters' names are anagrams of Limbo. This is representative in Matrix. We learned to stay open-minded and that anything can change, and that we really need to be prepared to make alterations where we felt necessary at any point. Most importantly, we learned that you have to plan everything. Plan it at the very start and plan everything as thoroughly as you possibly can. That way, if something does go wrong, you probably have a backup and it's easy enough to correct a mistake or go back and film or edit a scene that is in disarray. There's also a steep increase in the number of active hours needed to get the extra 90 seconds of footage. It would have been a major problem had we not have already experienced the preliminary and the adeptness you need to have toward the various applications and media text and forms. Each member of our group played a significant role in the creation of our movie. I personally from the beginning helped create the initial plot, monologue, shooting scripts. I also acted and performed the monologue. Together in our efforts and in equal amounts, we surmounted to the creation of this project. The only significant problem we encountered was the lettering being visible on the tablet bottle for Elysium. We had not accounted for this during the initial filming, and as we had experienced a similar problem during our preliminary, we knew what to do. We edited out the scene, reversed the shot so that the writing was not as visible.